But there are also individual benefits to be achieved, not just by the organization, but by people working within the product line organization. And so here's a representative list of the kinds of people that would benefit from a product line approach in the organization. Not just the CEO, who's basically the person looking at the kinds of organizational benefits you would expect to receive from a product line approach, but people like the chief operating officer, who's looking inside the organization for organizational efficiencies, people like the core asset developer, who is creating a significant contribution to the fielding of products by producing these reusable assets for use in product development. So people across the organization will benefit from the discipline imposed by a product line approach. So at the CEO level, you're seeing those kinds of organizational gains that I showed earlier, like time to market, productivity. Also, one of the things you can do with a product line approach, and I'll say more about this, is you can pose yourself to go after a particular market niche on the basis of the capabilities you have already established in your product line. An example of this is Cummins, where they set up a product line within the automotive group, but were also able to go after the market for industrial applications of diesel engines, applications other than highway trucks. If you're the chief operating officer of a product line organization, you are now seeing a more efficient use of your workforce, in the sense that everybody is trained in the product line way of doing things. Everybody understands that you have this reusable set of resources called a core asset base, and you have product development taking assets from the core asset base. And when you move from one customer development project to the next, you are not entering a whole new world. Every customer product development project understands how to create products from the core assets, whereas the old way of doing things might be look at the customer requirements, build a product specifically for that customer, following whatever processes are in place within that unit of the organization. And when you move from that unit into a different unit, they may have their own way of doing things. That all goes away in a product line context. So a lot of the routine aspects of building products to incorporate the common functionality is already well understood, and you as a product developer can focus on the product unique stuff. You're not constantly having to reinvent the wheel over and over again to take care of the stuff that's now handled in the core asset base. Also, from the point of view of the chief operating officer, since people are not spending as much time fighting the latest customer fire, there is now an opportunity to explore new markets and new opportunities for taking the product line further. There's opportunities to explore new technologies. So you have a way of standing back from the fray of day-to-day customer development and being able to take the long view across the set of products. And that's very often something that you cannot do in an existing setup that isn't a product line context, where you are totally devoted to, we got to meet the needs of this customer and we got to get a product out the door, and that's being replicated all across the organization. But it takes some time to change that organizational mindset and to be able to break away from that, which is why you need to be able to establish some of these roles in a product line organization, like a product line manager. So if you have an organization that's structured into multiple independent product development units, is there any role in the organization right now that looks across these independent product development efforts and can make decisions about how to rationalize the creation of an architecture and a set of components? And that, again, is often a significant challenge for an organization, being able to come up with this new role and having somebody in the organization with the necessary skills to do that. If you're a technical manager operating at the level of a specific customer development product, for example, now you have increased predictability of the kinds of products that you turn out, because a lot of the work has already been done in the core asset base, or at least the goal is to have as much done as you can within the core asset base. All the common stuff is taken care of. The additional development work needed for specific products is what occurs in product development. At least that's the nirvana. You also have well-established roles and responsibilities, because one of the things that accompanies a product line organization is what we call a concept of operations for a product line organization. So this is a description of what it means to be a product line manager and what the role and responsibilities of a product line manager are. What it means to be a core asset developer. What it means to be a product developer. What it means to be a product line architect. What are the roles and responsibilities in a product line organization? And how do those roles interact? And what are the information flows from one role to another? And what's the handoff between core asset development and product development if you are structured into separate units for core asset development and product development? And in fact, complementing this area of operations, as we call it, that comes up with the concept of operations, is a practice area called structuring the organization, which gets into decisions about how do we structure an organization for product lines, and is our current structure sufficient to be able to operate as a product line organization. So concept of operations and organizational structure work very much hand in hand, and it's not enough to say that we're going to become a product line organization and we're going to appoint a product line manager and a core asset developer, and we have a nice new org chart with boxes and lines, but we don't have any underlying operational concept for what they mean. So another example of practice areas that are related. They're broken out separately in the framework for reasons of explaining what the individual practice areas do, but in practice, many of them go together as you launch and then institutionalize product lines. Mike?
Conway's Law.
Oh.
How does that fit in with the product line type structure of an organization? Is everyone familiar with Conway's Law? Basically, the structure of the organization tends to match the architecture of the product. So if you've got a product line organization, you're structured a little differently than you would if you were a single product. So how does that dynamic come into play?
Well, in the sense that if you're structured in terms of different units creating core assets and products, then yes, your product line organization has a product line manager or maybe a product line steering group. It has a product line architect who's creating that significant core asset in the core asset base. It has other people as part of the core asset group creating other core assets. And then you have product development organizations down here taking those core assets and turning them into products. So yes, that organization exactly mirrors the kinds of roles and responsibilities. Now, in other organizations, particularly small organizations, where it may make more sense initially, either because of the structure or because of the way things get funded, it may make more sense to have product development and core asset development done within the same team. And one of the restrictions that we have found, or the constraints we have found that people operate under, is in the area of funding a product line venture. If you're an organization that delivers products to customers and the only way you can get money to do anything is to tie it to a customer project, it's going to be hard to justify creating a separate organization that isn't creating stuff directly for that customer. Ideally, you might want to have this, but in practice, because of your constraints right now, we're so customer focused, we're going to try to work within those constraints and generalize stuff for a particular customer in the hopes that we can reuse it later for other customers. Not an ideal approach, but again, that's a structure, and Conway that will be forced by your particular circumstances.
To what extent do you see resistance at, say, the technical manager level? Because another way of looking at this is I'm losing my autonomy, I'm losing my power, I can't make locally optimized decisions.
That's right, yes. And you do see resistance at that level. We've also seen resistance at the level of business unit managers, where your product line team is drawn, or should be drawn, from across multiple different business units. But you have business unit managers right now who are doing just fine, and they're making their numbers, and so why should they play ball in this new product line approach? So your job as the product line manager, in addition to coming up with a business justification for why the organization needs to move towards software product lines, you also need to have some control over the parts of the organization that are expected to cooperate in a product line venture. And usually control means money. Now, it's better if you can persuade people in the business units to play along because of the increased benefit that they will see in terms of getting products out the door faster and getting a greater range of products. But early on, yes, you will probably encounter resistance. Why do we need to change? Who says that this is the best approach for the organization? So the job of motivating people and making sure that the roles and responsibilities in the product line organization all work as harmoniously as possible together is a tough, demanding role, and the person in charge needs to be at the right level in the organization to make change happen. The framework itself, the framework for product line practice, doesn't directly address issues like resistance and culture and change agent skills and so on. There's plenty of other literature out there tackling those issues that we can point to, but because that kind of thing transcends product lines. But it is definitely something that you need to be aware of. And for some of our customers in large organizations that have grown by acquisition of smaller organizations, it's a particular challenge, because despite what the org chart says, the organizational cultures of the smaller units tend to persist. If you're an architect or a developer of a significant core asset, this is your earliest opportunity to screw up an entire line of products as opposed to a single product. So you had better know what you are doing. So there's an increased responsibility placed on you as the product line architect, for example. And you also, of course, have increased prestige within the organization. And in fact, one of our customers had a product line architect lead the product line effort. That he became a product line champion for that organization. So this is a very responsible position, and the person in charge of creating an architecture for an entire line of products, or creating a large-grained reusable asset that's going to carry across a range of products, had better be competent in the areas of expertise needed to build that asset. If you're a software product developer, the kinds of things that developers have reported to us in product line organizations is, first of all, there's higher morale and greater job satisfaction, because in a product line organization, once you have institutionalized product line practice, you can actually start getting products out the door on time and within budget. And that can really boost a person's self-esteem. The other thing they told us was that you have more time to explore new ways of doing things and be innovative in the kinds of products that you build, because a lot of the routine stuff is already taken care of by having the core asset base in place.
Are we going to be getting into any discussions talking about the inherent risks and risk management of going to a product line approach? It's definitely a different flavor than
We're not going to. There are practice areas in the framework that deal with the risks at both the technical management level, so at the core asset and product development level, and then at the organizational level. we're not going to deal with them directly, but for each of the practice areas I'm going to show you, I will show you some of the risks involved with those particular practice areas.
Because you joke about you had an opportunity to screw up a complete series of products. That's a risk you got to address.
Yes, that's right. And in fact, on that subject, one of the things that organizations sometimes do when they're new to product lines is, for example, in product development, they assume that product development is where the action is. We get products out the door, we get paid for them. So I'm going to put my best people in product development, and the rest of them I'll put them in core asset development and let them figure out, a reusable architecture, but the real action is here in product development. That's exactly backwards.
It used to be if you can't code, they put you in QA.
Well, there is
the
that.
wrong spot you want to be.
So things like that, and understanding that if you're really serious about software product lines, you have to treat it as this is something that is a business proposition for the organization. We're in it for the long haul. It's going to take us time to recover the investment we've made in setting up this core asset base and in setting up this reusable architecture. So we better make sure that the people who are creating these artifacts that will span an entire line of product are really talented people. So it's a big risk if you don't put a really talented architect in the role of product line architect. And similarly for the other core assets. If you're the marketer in a product line organization, now you're selling products with a pedigree like Chip System 2000, for example. And in fact, what Celsius Tech found was they educated their marketers to talk to customers in terms of offerings from the product line. So a customer comes along with a need for a ship system, and they say, we have all of these requirements, and this is our particular system we want you to build for us. Celsius Tech is able to say, yes, we can certainly build that system for you, but it'll be your unique system and it'll cost you this much and it'll take us so long to develop it. On the other hand, if we build this as a member of our product line, we can get it to you in X months instead of 3X months and for a lot less cost. And you negotiate with your customers on the basis of offerings from the product line, rather than the old way, which is, yes, sir, whatever you want, we will build it for you, and we will suffer the consequences of maintaining all these disparate products that have no commonality. So you as a product line marketer or a product line business person, you may have to push back occasionally when customers want a really unique product. And you will have to make a decision, how much pushback can we afford to make before we turn people off? So as I said earlier, it's not that you have to build everything as a member of the product line, but certainly you'd like to get as many customers as you can on board with this idea of buying members of your product line rather than something that's unique for that particular customer. And finally, as a customer of a product line organization, you will see things like higher quality products. You will see a more predictable delivery cycle from your supplier or from the customer or the producer to the customer. You will have better documentation. You'll have well-tested materials. In the case of Celsius Tech, there was a Ship System 2000 users group set up to share experiences. And if you're an end user, one of the benefits you'll see is that over the range of products offered by the organization, there's a common look and feel, which speeds up your learning process as you move from one variant of the product to another. If you move up from the Pro edition to the Enterprise edition, it's not a totally new product. You'll see fewer defects because these products are out in the marketplace. They're being tested and reused in multiple different contexts. There may be a network of other users, and again, there'll be better training materials and documentation because in an organization that's routinely operating as a product line, all of these artifacts will be treated as core assets of the product line organization.